Hi, I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to this Thought Leadership series for Finextra TV. In this interview, we'll be looking at the impact of the recent pandemic on the SME landscape, some of the challenges small businesses are facing and some of the solutions they can implement to help them move beyond traditional banking. To help us through the topic now is Milan Gauder, Executive Vice President for Product Innovation for Europe at Mastercard. So welcome, Milan. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. No problem at all. So yes, over the last few months, we've been hearing a lot from a number of thought leaders about the impact of COVID-19 on various areas of the industry. But for the purpose of this interview, I'd really like to home in on the impact it's had on SMEs in particular. So let's start there. Can you tell us how the pandemic has transformed this landscape, especially in Europe?
The pandemic has transformed all of our lives, of course, in the last 6 months, but small shops' life changed dramatically. I think their life changed in three different ways because their consumer changed how they do shopping. One is people shop local. So, of course, any shop what was like a distance away, they see a massive impact. The second, that people started to shop digitally. They order stuff for delivery at home. And the third, if they still went out, then they didn't want to touch too many things. They didn't want to touch cash. They didn't want to touch even a PIN pad. So they tried to pay touch-free way. So knowing these three things, that how consumers change their behavior, that they didn't want to leave home, they didn't want to go too far, they didn't want to touch anything, we had to have the little shops to adapt to these changes, to become more digital, to be able to serve their customer remotely, to adopt that when consumers don't want to touch anything, they want to pay contactless way, then they can accept that. And also generally the whole transformation for these small shops to thrive and not just to survive, we wanted to educate them on how to go through a digital transformation in a very limited and short period of time.
All right, so what are some of the challenges then that small businesses are facing as a result of this?
If you think about the small shops, generally 99% of the businesses are small shops, small companies around Europe, and they employ 2/3 of the population in Europe. So they are the backbone of our economy. But they are small companies, and by definition, they don't have a digital department and a finance department, a CFO and CDO, and they don't have a massive cash reserves to survive. They survive from 1 month to the other. So knowing that for them, adopting to such a massive change is not easy. So what we did, we tried to help them to get financing to turn into more digital mode, not just in their payment, but also generally how they serve their customer, everything online, everything through the mobile, booking, ordering, and all that. We organize education session to get them ready for this new norm.
Well, exactly. So your role is in product and innovation. So I'd like to talk a bit more about that. What are you doing in this role at Mastercard to tackle the challenges and support businesses going forward then?
If you think about what we can do on very short term to help the companies to adapt to the new norm is, for example, little shops when they wanted to sell everything contactless, then we increased the contactless limit in 40 countries in Europe at the beginning of April, so very early on. So that enabled everyone to shop without touching anything online. When we wanted to help them to sell online, so to be able to accept some digital payment, card payment, and be able to serve their customer that way. And the third is to get financing to, especially small businesses, they needed to survive the 1 or 2 or 3 months of lockdown. So they needed some financial instrument which helped them to keep the flow until their donors coming to their shops.
All right, and lastly then, and sort of moving beyond traditional banking, what are some of the solutions small businesses should be looking towards to secure their place in the market then? And what's Mastercard doing in the space?
Giving you a couple of examples, when you have a small shop and you want to suddenly sell something online, building out a whole homepage and start to accept card, and turn your whole ship towards a fully digital service, that's not that easy. But it can be made easier, and these are the solutions. We partnered up with many companies, for example, Viber in Bulgaria, where you have an online shop. You can set it up very quickly, like a Facebook page, and you can start to sell on that marketplace and be paid by Mastercard Send. And we also teamed up with the Turkish government and two Turkish banks. That the Turkish government wanted to distribute money, loans to the small businesses across the country. And to do that effectively, they used our rails and these two banks, that the money, the loans, went with the government guarantee to the small shops across the country, and then they could spend it locally, they could spend it digitally, and they could spend it effectively. And the government saw that and helped the whole economy to thrive.
It's really interesting, this space, and it's going to be fascinating how it develops as well. And it sounds like you're working on some interesting things at Mastercard. But Milan, for now, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for calling in and sharing your insights. It's been really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.